For Real Agriculture, I'm Kelvin Hepner. We're at the Crop Connect conference in Winnipeg once again, and pleased to be joined by Pete Nelson, founder and president of AgLaunch, joining us here in beautiful Winnipeg, Manitoba, from Memphis, Tennessee. Pete, can you tell us about AgLaunch, what it is, what the concept is of this organization?
Yeah, and thank you for having me, and it is beautiful, but also very cold for me from being down in the south. AgLaunch is a group of innovative farmers. We started in the Mississippi Delta region of the U.S. We now have a pool in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, the Midwest in Iowa, and we're reaching out across the country and, frankly, maybe into Canada. And what we do is we work with startup companies. Generally, it's very early stage, no revenue, but with a good idea. We attract those companies from all over the world, and they come to us, and what we give them is farmer knowledge and insight, data, ability to do farm trials at scale over the country, and then help build and expand their companies. And that's a unique model. What's probably the most important thing is we take an equity position in each one of those companies, so we are not doing that for fees or just for the good of overall agriculture. We're doing that to make sure that the innovations really apply to helping farmers, and that farmers actually have equity, meaning stock ownership, in the companies that we work on and build.
Okay, so it's startup culture meets grassroots agriculture, farmer culture.
That's a good, yeah, and what you'll find in ag is there's a lot of startup energy. There's whole conferences of thousands of people, AgTech, or food as medicine, all these different big themes. Within that, there's very little way for a startup to actually get onto a farm and begin to scale. So the power of this, we did 84 field trials across the U.S. With this current portfolio group of companies. Total portfolio of about 40 companies. We're on millions of acres. So these solutions actually work for farmers and investors, and farmers have a stake in every piece of it.
So what attracts farmers to participating in your network?
Normally, I'm going to use the word peculiar. Hopefully, this is we call them the 2.5%ers. So these are the innovator farmers. Everybody in every community knows who those are. They kind of show leadership characteristics. They're always piddling with something new or interested and curious. So those, instead of what happens now, where somebody brings them an idea, may or may not work, and they spend a lot of time, we have them all basically in a pool. They work together within this limited liability company to put that energy into a larger pool of companies and grow. So our target is those 2.5% innovator early adopters, and we're basically harnessing the energy they already use to be creative and just doing that as a pool.
Okay. So yeah, like you say, these are the experimenters already that now they have potential to, I guess, see value on their farm from this startup's new technology, but also the equity position that your company takes in these companies.
And probably the most important thing is odds for success. And this is not knocking any individual company, but if you're getting started in ag, honestly, all the way up through Series A, so 50 employees, you've already raised millions of dollars. If you're just in that range, your chances of success are actually very small. They go way up if you've got a network of farmers helping you, but if you're an individual farmer tinkering, your capacity is only going to be able to deal with one or two at a time, and that those then come to you just because they found you somewhere or came to a meeting, and so it's not systematized. And so having a process where to get to the 40 companies we're working with now, we had about 280 that applied. We use farmers and screening working together to get down to the ones we've actually put energy into, and so some of our farmers call us, we're their R&D division. Even if we're a big farm, remember, they're not big enough to have their own research and development and commercialization pipeline. AgLaunch as a pool provides that for all of our members.
Do you have some specific examples or stories of startups or technologies that you consider to be a success story?
Yeah, we've got several that have come through. One is a company called Rantizo that's now in 28 states across the U.S. and is probably the leading swarm drone spray company. So that, we remember well, our partners in Iowa wrote the first check into that company. Farmers in Tennessee did the first field trials. Drone ran into a tree, or all kinds. I remember duct taping things together, and so then going 6 years later, it's a scaled company. It's raised about $15 million, and has employees and retailers and cooperatives using that solution throughout the U.S. So that would be an example. We've had some other companies that are growing either in other regions. We thought they were going to grow here, but they've spread out more in South America, or others that we've actually taken our cash out of and returned that back to farmers. And then we've got some others that look like they're going to be good different product lines for some of the multinationals that, again, the farmers will have a much better likelihood of it being a workable solution, but will actually get to cash out.
So can you speak, Pete, to the underlying, I guess, principle, the premise of this idea from from that grassroots farmer's perspective, why that's important?
Yeah, well, this started, my cousin, I was really blessed with his mentorship really early. He was the president for a while of the American Soybean Association. He instilled it in me really back when I was on my own small farm 25 years ago, instilled me this idea as farmers, we spend money in the U.S. through our checkoffs and other resources. We incentivize and de-risk really early research and technology, and then if we're lucky with the current system, it goes through the channels, gets licensed by a big multinational, and then we get to buy it back from them. And so we started, even with that 2.5 decades ago, saying farmers need to be able to contribute. We're putting cash in through the checkoffs, we're putting cash in through being a customer. If we can line all that up and be more organized. So this has been the attempt of sort of synthesizing all that over the years to go, the value proposition of farmers putting their knowledge, their data, their land assets by running field trials and effort. If we can do that at scale, we can change the whole game that AgTech works and how to bring stuff to market.
Bring a whole nother, kind of unlock a whole nother layer of efficiency in that whole process.
Absolutely, and there's several big inefficiencies, but one is we counted several years ago in the U.S. and Canada there's about 90 ag tech sort of commercialization programs. They're all over the place, and one problem with those is generally what they're doing is they're basically have their Rolodex of big companies. So you go through some business training as a startup, and then you think that the holy grail is now I've got somebody's phone number in R&D at a big ag chem company or John Deere. All fine, but what it misses is the step is if you build it with farmers, you now are where those companies are going to end up anyways, taking that same technology, but it's going to be years out. So we're speeding the efficiency by being on farms with farm feedback in a way that the farmers are thinking not even just about just their farm, but overall agriculture and how these solutions would work. And I didn't fully appreciate this. Leaps by Bayer, which is Bayer's venture capital arm, they just put out in the end of 2024, they called Ag Playbook. And it's specifically for small molecule chemistry, but it kind of applies. And they said the two big drivers, cost drivers for getting a new product to market, one is R&D cost and regulatory. We all would know that for chemistry. The other is getting on farms and scaling with farmers. Well, every company, whether it's a robotic company or a biologic, has that same massive lift. We're the only group that's solving at scale that lift.
Okay. That was going to be one of my next questions, because I asked you earlier why farmers would participate. I was going to ask you why startups or why companies would participate or engage with your group.
Well, it's interesting, and there's really very little, I'd say with ag tech in general, we're still at the hype stage. So, the frenzy started, and a lot of investors came in when Climate Corps was sold to Monsanto for $1 billion. There's been some other big ones, like Blue River selling to John Deere, but really not to the $1 billion. And what's happened really in the sort of ag tech, ag innovation world is we've just kept making the pie of what counts bigger. So now we have meatless meats and downstream products, and all of it counts to try to kind of create this illusion that there's been real exits and we're really getting technologies to market at scale. I have a strong argument that it really hasn't changed. People were acquiring companies and were investing in companies pre-Climate Corps, pre-calling it ag tech, in the wrap up of the biotech companies and all that stuff. So in that environment, our argument to startups is, and it was a harder argument 5 years ago, now people are coming to us to get in, is you're wasting your time if you're trying to run around doing just customer discovery calls. Get on a farm with farmers as co-founders, and you're going to scale much faster, much more efficiently. And we think we're creating a whole new way to get to market that works for lower regulatory. These are biology, robotics, AI, those kind of things. We think this is the class of how to do it and shaking out the efficiencies and growing them.
So final question then, of course the last year or two we've also heard about venture capital investments and just in general the capital in ag tech drying up, or at least plateauing, pulling back in what's available there. Do you see your model being resilient or having a strong showing through maybe a downturn in the amount of venture capital that is flowing into AgTech?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's been an overall downturn of VC in general. You referenced that. Don't want to address that. That's for a lot of reasons, but some of them sort of track with AgTech. So one is unrealistic expectations. Two is people that don't know anything about agriculture, really understand it, trying to invest in the space. Three is people coming out of industry with, I would say, a myopic view. You would have never gotten an Apple computer if it was a bunch of IBM guys that came out. So you've got that view. So for a lot of those reasons, it has been tough for pre-seed through Series A venture. One bigger argument is that venture capital, we call it venture capital, but it's private equity. There's not a theory of change. There's not a long-term view. There's not a real willingness to make bets on intuition because people are not oriented because they don't understand the space. So the biggest thing we're doing is we understand this. We may be wrong. We're in the venture business, but we understand it. We believe we understand where the levers are. We understand how to mitigate against the macro. We also believe, and we're unlocking this now, there is plenty of capital. An example of that is the farm credit system in the U.S. loans 40% of the farm loans. Well, they have mechanisms, including through the Rural Business Investment Company program, to put some of their balance sheet into equity that now you have a farmer-aligned pool that could go back to the beginning. So a big part of this for us is we've had to weather the shakeout of, is this going to be a corporate thing? Is it going to look like pharma? Is it going to look like Silicon Valley tech? And we're saying none of those. It's going to be this systematic, on farms, organized across the country with the right investors, and that's what we're shaking out. So it is a problem now, but I think it's a problem that's going to get shaken out, and we're going to, like I said, capital, data, this farmer approach, those are all through the AgLaunch model getting reoriented.
Well, it's fascinating to think about the model and the potential that it could bring to the market and to our industry, of course.
Well,
thanks for your time, Pete.
It was fun. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.